Welcome to the Dental Team Podcast. I'm your host, Kiera Dent, and I have this crazy idea that maybe I could combine a doctor and a team member's perspective because let's face it, dentistry can be a challenging profession with those two perspectives. I've been a dental assistant, treatment coordinator, scheduler, biller, office manager, regional manager, practice owner, and I have a team of traveling consultants where we have traveled to over 165 different offices coaching teams. Yep, we don't just understand you, we are you. Our mission is to positively impact the world of dental, and I believe that this podcast is the greatest way I can help elevate teams, grow VIP experiences, reduce stress, and create A-teams. Welcome to the Dental Team Podcast. Hello, Dental Team listeners. This is Kiera, and you guys, today is an epic day for Dental Team Podcast and for me personally. I have one of my best friends. We have been friends. You have heard me talk about him on the podcast. He is my best friend from Tony Robbins in 2019. This is the myth, the legend, the one and only Pierce Krol. Welcome to the show today, Pierce. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. That's a heck of an intro. A lot to live up to.
So just giving you guys a little bit of background, Pierce and I went to Tony Robbins Business Mastery in 2019 in Vegas, and I was a little bit of a chicken and terrified. And Pierce, how tall are you? You're like 6'9",
6'3",
in my opinion. So, he's 6'3". Pierce is not a short guy at all. And we were in a group. I remember the day I saw you for the first time in the group. We were sitting there and we were all raising our hands for who was an artist, who was an entrepreneur, and I don't remember the other one. Oh, a manager. So that was one of the choices, right? So if you like to manage, do the tasks, or are you an artist who's very creative and you're so passionate about your business, but not necessarily concerned about your financial well-being? And then there's the entrepreneurs that are cutthroat. They're going to make money. They're going to go after things. They're going to make the hard decisions. And we all raise our hand. And for those of you listening, let's just have you guess, is Kiera Dent an artist, an entrepreneur, or a manager? If you guessed artist, you were correct. And guess who Pierce is? Entrepreneur, manager, or artist. He's cutthroat. He's the best entrepreneur I've ever met in my life. And I pointed at him in the circle and said, Pierce, we are going to be best friends. And here we are 4 years later on a podcast. Pierce is one of the most brilliant business owners I've ever met. We talk every single month. And so that's my little intro of who Pierce is. But Pierce, tell us kind of who you are, how you've become such a successful entrepreneur. He's not a dentist. I'm purposely bringing on a friend not in the industry because Pierce is someone who has just inspired me truly, personally and professionally over the last 4 years. So Pierce, that's my side of the story. What's your side of the story? And who is this Pierce Krol and how did you become who you are?
Yeah, no, and I've got a much different take than you, which is it was kind of cool, right? Because you see this guy, this big guy that's got the traits that you think you've seen, and so here I am, this big guy in this group of thousands of people, and so I'm sitting next to you, and I see again this artist, vibrant, social, everything that I'm not, and so I'm going, well, I have to. If I'm going to accomplish what I want to accomplish, I've got to connect with someone who's extremely social, who can make friends with anyone because I'm not going to go and make friends that easily. So love the other side of the coin. And I don't know if you noticed, but I set my background on purpose today. There's a little trophy in the back, so you can poke and prod at that whenever you're ready. But it was so fun. No, it was great. And I mean, we've been friends ever since, but yeah, thanks for having me on your podcast. It's such an inspiration to see you do all these wonderful things. So I'm pumped to be here. So
I
thank
appreciate
you.
that. I definitely saw the trophy in the background because it just to finish the story. Pierce and I were at Business Mastery. We were creating a business, and our business won. So we created this Live to Give. It was unbelievable. We were helping out this other business. We raised thousands of dollars in 3 days. And that's the moment where I realized how much you need to put into a business, but how much growth can happen when you're surrounded by really brilliant people, connected, committed, rowing in the same direction, and how much growth we're able to move so quickly. And so we all went up on stage. We got a hug from Tony Robbins. We're all dancing around. And Pierce, because he's gangly Goliath, was able to be tall enough. And Tony handed him the trophy. And I'm a little bit shorter, dressed as a nun. I was wrapped up in all my nun wear. And definitely have always loved that you got a trophy from the event. So it was super awesome. It was one of the coolest experiences we ever had. But Pierce, I want you to share. The reason I wanted you on the podcast today is you truly, I know you're not one for public recognition at all. I know it's probably the thing that drives you nuts the most. Pierce likes to be behind the scenes. He does not want to be in public. But you're brilliant, Pierce. And you and I have had a lot of conversations over the years. You've grown businesses, you've sold businesses, you currently have an insurance company business, and then you started it in your bed, in your kitchen. I remember you telling me, like, whip open the phone book, called people, like you're scrappy entrepreneur who's very successful. I just kind of want to know, like, your story from Pierce's perspective of how did you become who you are today? There's no right answer. I'm just curious of how did you even become who you are today from your angle?
Sure. Yeah. And I think I want to preface that with like, there's really is no right way. There's just the way that I've kind of found. And I think there's many different ways to get there, but yeah, you're very kind. It's very humbling to hear you say those things. But, my story really is this story of evolving, I think is the best way to describe it. I didn't grow up in an extremely difficult household, and I didn't grow up in an extremely affluent household where everything was handed to me either. But what was given to me at a very early age is a work ethic. And so that's kind of where it started, was that work ethic piece. And so I've kind of got this saying, like, it's almost business advice in a way that, one of the habits that I have is outworking your competition. And so and what I mean by that is, if you can outwork your competition, you don't necessarily have to outthink them. And that was kind of the baseline of my start. And
You see why I
so,
brought him on, guys? Any dentists out there think you can outproduce your problems? Like, okay, Pierce, you're speaking to the right crowd. Go on. We can relate.
okay, good. And so that was, I mean, that was really my limiting belief too. So I grew up on a family farm, and it was phenomenal. And we worked a lot, and we had days off when it rained. And so that was kind of, set me up to be who I am. So, you can't really, at the time, it was a lot of work, and had some negative, thoughts around it. But looking back, you can't really be the person you are today without recognizing, the experiences that you went through. And it wasn't traumatic, but it was really that work piece. So still to this day, I have my limiting belief of, I'm this farm kid. Like, how am I going to compete in boardrooms and business? And you've got, you're looking at the Elon Musks of the world as kind of like the benchmark, which probably isn't accurate, but that's kind of what my thought process was. So I took to the hard work piece right away. And so what I learned early on, and again, I want to get to a health piece, because I don't think you can work hard forever. And we've had this conversation before, but in the early days, there's a big difference between what I say 9 to 5 money and 7 to 7 money. And what that really means is just getting there and working and believing yourself. And so that's not always like physical labor necessarily. That's learning new skills, attending conferences, having coaches and mentors like yourself where you can bounce ideas off. But it's really that work piece where you just carry on and kind of keep bettering yourself and doing those types of things. And so that's what I meant by hard work. So never giving up, and just always shooting for that next tier, that next level, if you will. And really, if you look at the math of it, I'm no mathematician necessarily, but if you put in 2 hours a day extra than what your competitors are putting, 2 hours over a year is, I mean, I think that works back about 30 extra days a year. So imagine we can do it 30 extra days in comparison to maybe, the person you're chasing down, or that competitor that's, maybe taking some time, taking the foot off the pedal. So that was always my thing in the early days. So, and then I started in business pretty young. I got into insurance in 2005, and at that point I was 19 years old. So I kind of joke, like, I don't have any other skill sets, but it was entrepreneurial from day one. So I've owned a few different businesses, you're right, over the years, and been investors and silent partners in others. But I absolutely just love everything business, and still to this day I joke around about buying a coffee shop or a laundromat or something, and just trying to make something really cool with it, because I just love business that much, and all those skills we've learned. So yeah, I mean, my story really, I think, would resonate with a lot of people in the fact that it's not that much different. I'm no superhuman. I don't have special powers. I'm a lot like you. You get up, you learn something, you've got a problem, you can bury your head in the sand, or you can solve that problem. And that's really been a lot of I guess my entrepreneurial journey, is just hitting these challenges, facing them, figuring out a way to get past them. Some hurt, some sting, but a lot of the hurdles you get over, and then you look back, 5, 10 years later, and it's pretty cool what you can accomplish.
I love that, Pearson. I enjoy talking to you because you're right. Your story is not that much different, but something I have picked up on over the years is you consistently execute. So when you and I get on a call, we swap, we swap stories. We'll share resources. We'll tell things that are working in both of our businesses. We've helped each other. It's been really fun to watch both of our businesses grow and us grow as people over the 4 years we've known each other. But it's something I noticed is you will execute like that day. Like I remember I gave you an ad. We were talking about hiring a marketing person and I was like, "Oh, Pierce, I wrote this ad and this is what I'm doing." And I sent it over to you and I said, "This is how I did it." Within probably 30 minutes of that call, I know you already had that ad posted, you interviewed, and by the next time we were talking, you had already hired somebody. And I think your consistent execution of ideas. I don't feel you read books or consume podcasts or consume content that you don't intend to execute on. And you're gutsy. You told me, Pierce gave me the best line. Pierce is a fantastic copywriter. I was like, Pierce, I should probably try and get people on the podcast. And you said, Kiera, you should tell them I've got 99 problems, but too many podcast downloads aren't one, and send this off to all these authors, which I did. And that's how I got Mike McCallowix on the podcast. And so
Nice.
you just go gutsy to the source. Tell people remember how you convinced someone to coach you? You get all these people to coach you and you don't go for the base level. You're like, nope, if I'm going to go, like, tell some stories of how do you even have that confidence to do it, Pierce? Because it's full blown guts. Like, this is why I chose you as one of my best friends, because you have no fear, because you're going to win and you'll find the way to do it.
You know what? I don't think, not that I don't have fear. I think my goals and what I'm trying to achieve always outweigh the negative thought. And I think I'm pretty fortunate that way. You're right. And I actually was thinking about this last week. So it's kind of cool that you bring it up about pivoting in the moment. And so I've never been one to really wait. You're right. But I'll kind of give you an example. Last week in our business, we had a struggle where we had a vendor of ours basically say they can't do something, basically pulled out. And so a lot of people, you sit down, you start licking your wounds, going, "Oh my God, what's going to happen? How am I going to overcome this?" Next thing you know, a week, 2 week, a month will go by. But in that moment, I basically got an email with news that I didn't really want. And within probably, 5 minutes, I had emails out to 10 different people going, "Okay, cool, let's pivot, let's move on." And I think that's important in the fact that, if you're going to feel sorry for yourself, you can do that. There's space for that. Take some time, but get up, pick yourself back up, and get back on the road. Like, get on and do something. Make your luck happen. And there's so many one-liners I can share, but it's like it's that story of that Rocky, right? Like you get knocked down, get back up again, get on with it, because no one's gonna really feel sorry for you. You're your biggest advocate. So go out and make your own luck in some way, shape, or form. So no, I don't know if that's the greatest trait to have, but it's that risk tolerance that where I'd be more afraid to not do something and regret it time after time than go and make a mistake. And we've talked about this lots, but in my business, and I think a lot of business owners feel the same way. And I think you should maybe practice this piece: is look at what failure's like. What is the risk of taking that, making that phone call, making that connection? And you're right. I reach out to people all the time. Like, I mean, you name a celebrity, and I've sent them a message on, "Hey, I want to talk to you. I want to talk about marketing and business." You name it. And honestly, I'm not going to share the names on here, but it's just who I am. And I've got amazing contacts because these are just human beings that are trying to do the same thing as you. And so a lot of the contractors and yeah, you're right, consultants and coaches all came from just sending an email or making a phone call. And again, tying it back to, like, what's the risk? Someone tells you no? Like, goodness, like that's the best case scenario some days, is getting just a polite no. So yeah, go out there, do it. You'll be surprised what you can uncover if you start flipping the stones over. Yeah, you're going to get a lot of no's, but that's failure. You're not going to die. You're not going to reach out to that person you idolize and say, "Hey, I'd love to sit down and have a coffee and hear your story." They're not going to email you back and go, "I hope you die." They're going to go, "Hey, I'm really busy. Maybe another time." And I go, "Perfect. I love another time. What time works for you?" And so it's just that kind of mentality. So it's kind of that reward feature where I've done that so much that I've seen it work. So it's second nature now. I get a no, I go find a yes. And that's been, that's really been, like, I wouldn't say the secret of the business, but for me as a person and a lot of, our correspondence over the years is like, let's just get up and let's just go do it. And let's solve that problem. It's a hurdle. That's at the end of the day, it's just a hurdle. Let's go jump this thing.
Right.
So yeah, that's it.
I hope you guys realize why I chose Pierce to be one of my best friends. I the things you say and the way your mentality is. I hope people also realize Pierce and I do have two very different personalities, but by science, which we have found on Culture Index, and
Yes.
I made Pierce take the Culture Index quiz, and I took it too. And our profiles are very different. I love people, and he doesn't necessarily love people, but we're both very driven, very outgoing people, very much committed to success, but we're very different. And that was something I wanted to highlight on the podcast today is choose people, have your friend group be people that intimidate you and inspire you. There have been times that Pierce has given me a good, like loving conversation that's reminded me of like, Kiera, pick yourself up. Like you've got a solution and this is what you need to do. I don't need friends that sugarcoat me. I need friends who are there supportive and who are going to push me. And so really making sure that your friend group is an elevated friend group, that they inspire you in different ways. And that's who Pierce is for me. And so I hope you guys have, like when I've got a problem, Pierce is who I usually call, personally or professionally, because I know he's got a solution and I know he's headed in the direction I want to go as well. On that same note, I'm going to pivot a little bit because Pierce is also a great example of work hard, find the solutions. Like Pierce is so driven. If you guys can just imagine someone with like a huge rubber band, like pulling them backwards, and Pierce is just like clawing at the ground to get forward, and he will find a way, no matter what's pulling him back, to find a way to hit that solution, no matter what. But I do feel like Pierce, you've also learned the health journey of what constant work, constant pushing has led. And so I'm curious, can we kind of pivot to the other side of the coin that most people don't talk about? And this is where I really want Pierce to dive into this health side of success and what that looks like and what your experience has been and what you've learned, because I think you're one of the key people that's willing to talk about this that most people aren't willing to share.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And before we go to that, I want to share one last thing because what I've found is people's struggles are really in themselves. It's this limiting belief. So I want to leave one thing with your audience, and it's basically about believing in yourself. So I had a coach once tell me, and it was really powerful for me, and it stuck with me. But they said, "What's the chances that you're going to fail?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" They said, and we're talking about business here, but it could really go with anything in your life. She goes, "What's the chance you're going to fail?" And I go, "I don't know." She goes, "Well, what's the chance you're going to succeed in this business?" Because we were talking about building something and making a large investment in another organization. And I go, "You know what? I think, I don't know, like 70%." She goes, "It's not 100." And I thought it was a trick, but it ended up being a trick. I said, "No, like there's a 70% chance this is going to go really, really well, maybe 80, but let's be conservative and go 70." She goes, "Perfect. Now let's flip that. Say you walked into a casino and you had a 70% chance of winning whatever your game. Let's play blackjack. How often would you play blackjack?" And I said, "I'd be there all day." And she goes, "So show up for yourself, bet on yourself." And so I want to leave it to the audience because it was really powerful for me because, yeah, I'm a bit of a self-starter, but I also have those beliefs of going, "Gee, this doesn't feel right." And you look back and go, "You know what? No, my chance of succeeding is higher than my chance of failing. And if this was a casino, I'd do this all day." So go for it. Trust your instinct. Bet on yourself. No one's going to show up for you like yourself. Don't rely on other people. Not that don't rely on other people, but really bet on yourself. So I wanted to wrap that up because it's super important. I think it might resonate with your audience across any industry, right? Every industry is hard.
Yeah. So I'm actually going to end this podcast on a cliffhanger, and Pierce and I are going to pick up another one on the other side of success with health. So guys, with that, bet on yourself, create your own luck. Pierce, you're a freaking dream. I adore you on every level. And all of you listening, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time on the Dental 18 podcast. And that wraps it up for another episode of the Dental 18 podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.